Hey music nerds, fans, and maybe even bands. I'm Ivan, and welcome back to another sick Aeroplane Over the Teen video. I'd switch it up on you, because I love you. Today, we're doing another discography review, my favorite kind of video to make. And we're looking at a band that I absolutely love, as is customary for this series. I think that this band that I'm about to talk about is one of the best post-punk bands making music right now. And as you know, there's a lot of great post-punk out there right now. Today, we're talking about IDLES. IDLES are a British punk band from Bristol, formed in 2009. The band consists of frontman Joe Talbot, bassist Adam Devonshire, guitarist Mark Bowen, drummer John Beavis, and other guitarist Lee Kiernan. This band has had a pretty interesting career so far, seeing as they just released an album in November. So I thought it would be the perfect time to dive into their discography and review it. You want to be in the video, Max? All right, stay there. All right, he's gone. So without further ado, let's talk about IDLES. In 2012, IDLES released their debut EP, Welcome, which is a fitting title because it really welcomes us to the group. The opener for the EP, 2627, is honestly one of the band's best tracks. It has the band's signature doomy punk sound that they lean into much more later on, but I really enjoy this track. I find it really interesting how mature this EP sounds despite being very early in the band's career. I know the band for being more in-your-face and abrasive with pummeling drums and witty yet slightly nonsensical lyrics, but this EP doesn't really do that as much. I like every song on here, and it honestly might be one of the band's best projects. It has some really incredible songs, and it's a good start to their sound, but it does kind of sound restrained. But that would all change with... In 2015, IDLES would release their second EP, Meet. Now this is more of the IDLES that we know and probably love. This EP is much more urgent sounding, and it has more quotable and memorable lines than on Welcome, which is something that I really like about this band. Just like on Welcome, this EP is comprised of just really great songs, but this time it's more cutthroat and aggressive than before. IDLES Chant feels like a great song to hear live near the end of a concert, with a very chantable chorus, which makes sense because it's called IDLES Chant. This EP brought IDLES sound closer to what they'd sound like on their debut album. Speaking of which... After their two first EPs, IDLES would release their debut album in 2017 entitled Brutalism. This album is just great, with some of the band's best songs. It actually has my favorite song from the band and one of my favorite songs of all time, 1049 Gotho. This track has so much emotion, with a stellar lead guitar part and really creative lyrics that talk about depression in a really abstract but original way. It's just a brilliant song. An extremely unfortunate event that had a big influence on the album was the death of Joe Talbot's mother, which happened in the middle of them making the album. You can really hear the influence that this tragedy had on the album with songs like Mother, which has such a powerful vocal performance from Joe, and you can really feel his pain. This album also has some really awesome bangers like Well Done, which is a really good showcase of the band's signature humorous lyric style. Joe is honestly one of my favorite lyricists in all music because of how sarcastic and odd a lot of his lyrics are. This album is really, really good, and it's definitely one of IDLES' very best projects. I think that this album and their next album are really their peak, especially their next one. In 2018, after the absolute gut punch that was Brutalism, IDLES gave us their best album to date by far, Joy as an Act of Resistance. This album is the closest to perfect that IDLES have ever gotten. Every song is a staple in the band's discography to the point where it almost feels more like a greatest hits album. Colossus is definitely the band's best opening track and probably a top 3 IDLES song, with the way it builds and builds and builds and then stops, and then this crazy anthemic punk explosion just hits you in the head and really tells you, hey, expect the unexpected with this album. It's going to be freaking amazing. The songwriting on here is so tight with some really great lines all throughout the project. Love Song is another favorite with some more great lyrics and awesome lines like, I love you, I really love you, look at the card I bought, it says I love you, or you're like a gun or a knife. Be my wife. Samaritans is a really great breakdown of toxic masculinity with an amazing chorus. This album has such a good punk energy throughout, but there's one song that has a much slower and down-tempo feel, the incredibly sad and devastating June. This song talks about a miscarriage in such a real and raw way, with Joe repeating the line, baby shoes for sale, never worn, which paints such a vivid picture. This album also has a song about doing cocaine at a funeral called Gram Rock, which is super fun and makes me laugh pretty much whenever I hear it. This album is truly excellent, and it's pretty close to perfect in my eyes. It's definitely the best album the band has ever made by far, in my opinion, and it also was the album that got me into them. In 2020, IDLES released their third album, Ultra Mono. I remember when this album came out, I was super excited and I listened to it a bunch. The reception of the album was super mixed and I was seeing a lot of people who weren't fans of it. I kind of get why they didn't like it. Some of the songs just don't hit as hard as on previous releases. And it's definitely a different direction from their previous work, but other than that, I think this album is just much better than what some people say online. This album opens with War, which is an absolute explosion of anger and fury. There are lots of awesome songs on here. My favorite definitely being Rains. That track has such a good build up in the verse, and then the chorus just hits so hard. And it's just a super enjoyable song that would be amazing in a live setting. The one track where I do kind of get why people didn't like this album as much is definitely Ne touchez pas moi. Sorry if I mispronounced it, because I did mispronounce it. Which has a good message, but in the end, I just find kind of annoying. I also think that they probably should have included the two singles they released before the real rollout of this album. Those tracks being Mercedes Marxist and I Dream Guillotine. But I think the track list we got is still very good. Other than that, this album is very solid and includes some of the band's best material in my eyes. It's definitely not their best album, but it's still a very good one. And I think it should be regarded as such. This past November, the band actually released another new album, which I wasn't expecting, but was excited for nonetheless. The lead single, The Beachland Ballroom, is one of IDLES' best songs in my opinion, and it got me very excited for the album. The album we ended up getting, Crawler, was pretty good, but kind of a letdown in my eyes. There are some truly great songs and ideas, but I don't feel like it packs the same punch as a lot of their best stuff. There aren't really any lyrics that I have the same reactions to like on previous projects, and a lot of the songs were kind of forgettable. But when this album hits, it really does hit, with songs like When the Lights Come On, Crawl, and the aforementioned masterpiece that is Beachland Ballroom. Seriously, that might be a top 2 IDLES song for me. I think this album was a pretty interesting experiment for the band, and I'm very curious to see where IDLES go from here, because I think this album could be the start of an interesting new direction for them that Ultra Mono kind of alluded to, but only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Just like all my videos, this was a true labor of love for something I'm truly passionate about. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video, because I think it's going to be a truly great one. If it's not, you can hold me to that in the comments. Rip me apart. I think it's going to be great, but I haven't filmed it yet, so maybe it's not. But until then, have an amazing day or night or weekend or whatever, and goodbye.